Only a small number of people have actually moved to Oregon in the 20 years since the Death with Dignity law became legal there, specifically to end their lives over a terminal illness. Now we're inside by the numbers. Last year, doctors wrote lethal prescriptions for 122 people. Only 71 used them, or 0.2% of all Oregon deaths that year. The average age for those who took a prescription for end-of-life purposes was 71. And so far, 752 people in Oregon have used a drug since the passage of the law to die on their own terms. For more insight into the legal side of end-of-life care, I'm joined from Portland by George Eighmey. He's a former Oregon state legislator and a board member at the Death with Dignity National Center. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
George, Brittany had millions of online views. Why do you think there's been such a strong response to Brittany's story? Why has it struck a chord and garnered so much interest and commentary?
Well, I think you alluded to it in your statistics. First, the typical person is 71 years old and is dying surrounded by family members and has children and has generally lived a full life. Brittany, 29 years old, very young, very articulate, very well educated, and she's facing death. And that in and of itself strikes at the hearts of many, many, many people. And that's why her story of bravery, frankly, is so compelling and so widespread throughout the world.
Can you explain the Death with Dignity law for our audience who are just now hearing about this, some of them?
Yes, it's not an easy law to use, but it is available. First of all, you have to be an adult, you have to be a resident of Oregon, you have to have 2 doctors who are willing to say and have examined you and say that you have 6 months or less to live and that you're mentally competent to make the request. You then have to have, the patient has to have 2 oral requests, a minimum of 15 days apart, and 1 written request where the signature is witnessed by 2 people, one of whom cannot be a family member. And then, of course, they have to get the medication, and the medication is not inexpensive. It runs between $1,500 to $2,500 for 10 grams. And
George,
then the final decision is, when do you take it? And that's a tough one.
George, what are some of the misconceptions that people have when it comes to end-of-life choices?
Well, first of all, the misconception is that somehow you will be pressured into using Oregon's Death with Dignity law. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The patient, the dying person, has to convince their loved ones this is their decision, this is what they want. And it's understandable. The family members keep saying, please try something else, please do something else, take this medicine, we want you to live longer. But there is a point at which the person says, I've lost autonomy, or I fear continued loss of autonomy, and my quality of life has decreased to the point where it's no longer acceptable. That misconception of pressure from family has been disproved over and over again. Another thing is money. Most people have health insurance. Over 90% have health insurance. Over 95% are in hospice care or palliative care of some sort. And so they're getting the type of care that makes their final days at least more tolerable. So it isn't money that is, and it isn't what the not dead yet people say, a denigration of their existence with their disabilities. In fact, we put a provision in the law that says specifically, no one with a disability may use the law solely based upon a disability. They must have a terminal diagnosis and a 6-month prognosis. Those are just a few of the misconceptions, and there are others.
All right, George Eighmey, thank you so much for joining us from Portland, Oregon. We certainly appreciate your insight.
Thank you.